Jacksonville Jaguars fans, welcome in to Duval Daily, presented by GenJag.com. I'm Jordan DeLugo. Thanks so much for being here. Monday, February 2nd. Really excited for this one. We're talking draft. We're talking about offensive line, and it doesn't get much better than that. Look, the offensive line, it did really very well for the Jaguars overall this year. I think that there was some moments where you would have liked to seen more consistent execution in the run game. There was moments here and there, especially earlier in the season before Cole Van Lanen came in and solidified the left tackle spot, where things just felt like they were still a work in progress, but they did the job. They gave Trevor Lawrence enough time to get rid of the football for most of the year, and they helped improve the running game in a big way. And I know everybody criticizes the run game down the stretch for the Jaguars, which I understand, but we've talked about it on this channel so many times. Look at the teams they were facing in the run game and look at why the results were not as good. And you also look at the fact that the Jaguars just became much more pass-oriented down the stretch because the pass game with Trevor Lawrence and Jacoby Myers and Parker and Brenton Strange and Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Etienne out of the backfield, all these guys, the pass game was cooking. So they became a much more pass-oriented team. But they were also going against teams like the Broncos, who have a great run defense, the Titans, who had a great run defense down the stretch, the Colts, who had a really good run defense. These are the types of teams that were playing down the stretch. And then you get into a game against the Bills, against a subpar run defense, and you're running all over them. I still personally feel like, and I'm trying not to go on a rant here, but like I still cannot believe that Liam Cohen didn't think he should be running the football more in that game when you clearly have a decisive advantage in the run game and you have more of a 50-50 battle in the passing game. It felt like it was like you were landing punches, they were landing punches in the passing game. And look, it is absolutely true that Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars offense, they gave them the lead twice in the fourth quarter, and the defense couldn't hold on to it. That is absolutely true. But I think that you wouldn't have had such a close ball game potentially if you just ran the ball more, because they could not stop you. All that to say, we are talking about an offensive lineman, a specific offensive lineman in today's show, the NFL Draft Stock Exchange show, which is Trevor Sikkema and Connor Rogers. They did a 2-round mock draft following the Senior Bowl, and so we have to take a look at the player they selected for the Jaguars, which, as you can tell by what we've talked about so far, is an offensive lineman. I'm excited for it. Really appreciate y'all being here. If you enjoy the content, please like and subscribe. And also check out GenJag.com. Pick up some new Duval gear. So you look at what the Jaguars have going on here in this NFL SE mock draft. If you haven't been paying attention, the Jaguars only have I say only. Their first pick is pick 56. So like they do not have a first round pick. They do not have an early second round pick, any of that sort of stuff, unfortunately. But they do have 56, 81, 88, and currently it's slated for 100. But it could end up being a little bit lower than that, just because the official numbers for the comp picks have not been doled out yet. So it's around 100 right now. But that's 4 picks in the first 3 rounds, which is exciting, even though you don't have a first rounder. And if you want to get aggressive, you can get very close to the first round. You can get back up into the first round. But the pick that the NFL SE guys made, particularly Connor J. Rogers, because I think they were flipping picks back and forth, kind of snake drafting it there. But it was Chase Basantis out of Texas A&M. And really interesting one. You know, to go offensive line to start the draft for the Jaguars is not something I've seen yet. It's not something I've done yet in any of my 3 mock drafts that I've done for the Jaguars. But I really got to say, I don't have an issue with it at all. And that's because if you're just talking about upgrading the offensive line, like, yes, continue to pour resources into offensive line. There is no such thing as too much offensive line. Now, from a numbers standpoint, there's different things you might have to do. Like, so if the Jaguars drafted Chase Basantis or someone else on day 2 of the draft, which I have had them taking an offensive lineman like in the third round, I think every mock draft I've done so far. So like this is not far off from what I've been thinking. You're probably moving on from Chuma Edoga. You probably are. It's early, got to get some coffee. But yeah, like Chuma Edoga, you can save almost $3 million against the cap if you decide to move on. And you don't have to do that before the draft. You can wait till, after the draft, and it's not exactly right by the player as much, but you don't have to box yourself into being like, okay, we got rid of Chuma, we got to go get a guy. So you could wait, but you could also use that cap space. If you're thinking you're going to do this, if you're thinking we're going to walk away with an offensive lineman, you could potentially move on from Chuma Edoga right at the beginning of the league year, all that stuff, allow him to have like a full free agency and use that cap space you save to potentially bring in another player, right? So that's kind of how I'm thinking of it there with the offensive line. And there's also the Walker Little of it all. And Walker Little is certainly a player that a lot of folks would like to move on from. A lot of Jaguars fans would like to move on from. You're not moving on from him from a salary cap standpoint this year. And I don't think the Jaguars have any incentive to cut him because he is a valuable backup at this point. He's shown that he can play guard for you. He can play tackle for you. There is value in having him as a backup, and I would rather have him on the field than Chuma Edoga, certainly. So it's like there's no value in moving on from him unless you can find a trade partner. I kind of doubt you can just because of the cap number that he carries. I don't think anybody's going to look at him and say, we got to get this guy in our starting lineup as a tackle. He looked pretty good at guard. I have to give him credit for that. I mean, maybe he could start at guard somewhere, but is another team going to trade draft capital for a $15 million guard who is, reasonably unproven at guard overall? It's interesting. It absolutely is. And we're going to talk, I wanted to frame this with what the Jaguars have going on the offensive line, and then we'll talk about Chase Basantis as well. But first, if you're not on Underdog, you got to get on it. You're in luck. New customers, they score $75 in fantasy bonus entries when you make first $5 fantasy entry. Pretty awesome. Playing on Underdog is easy. Just head over to the app, make picks on a player, if they'll go higher or lower on stats like touchdowns, rushing yards, receptions, and more. You can also look now at teams as well, just head to head. So that's pretty cool. I love Underdog. I love the user experience, the user interface, all the different options you have. This week I'm looking at, obviously the big game, right? And it's the last football game of the season, which is absolutely incredible. I know my family was like, there's no football this week. My mom was looking at the NFL schedule. She's like, there's no football this weekend. What are you going to do with yourself? So yeah, but this upcoming weekend, we do have the one big game left, and I'm looking at. I've been an anti-Sam Darnold person for a long time, not because I don't like the guy, just because I didn't think he was a championship level quarterback, but I think he's about to prove me wrong. I think the Seahawks are going to get the job done. So that's what I'm looking at personally right now. There's a lot of other players you can look at again, just looking at higher or lower on a specific stat in that game. So it's exciting stuff. But download the app today. Use promo code Duval Daily to score $75 in fantasy bonus entries when you play your first $5 on Underdog. That's promo code Duval Daily. Underdog, make picks, win money. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama, Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Arizona, Massachusetts, and Virginia, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. See assets.underdogfantasy.com/web/play and get terms _DFS_.html for details. Offer not valid in Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. Shout out to Underdog Fantasy. If you're supporting them, you're supporting us. So, Chase Basantis. Again, I am on board with the Jaguars just saying, first pick, if we love this offensive lineman, bring him in. And he plays guard. He did primarily as a freshman play right tackle at Texas A&M. And that was his worst year, but he was a freshman. right? So you don't blame him too much there. He has definitely improved greatly. I think he's still a very young player. He's 6'5", 315 pounds. Um, I gotta say, just popping on the tape and looking at this guy from an athletic and size perspective, I'm impressed. I'm really impressed. And I think that at 56, he would potentially be a big value. I really believe that. He's 21 years old. June 10th is his birthday, so he'll be 22, heading into his rookie year. So there's no concern with age as everybody wants to talk about, right? But fairly young player, 3 years of experience, actually, playing significant reps. And he's played primarily left guard. He's got a little bit of right guard experience, a little bit of right tackle experience. Well, actually a good bit from his freshman year, but it's been a while. But you look at what he does. At 6'5", 315, I think the biggest thing that stands out is how athletic he is at that size. Like 315 is not a small guard. The Jaguars, a lot of their players are not as big as Chase Basantis on the offensive line. And he moves incredibly well. He's got nimble, explosive movements. He's quick and agile. One of the things I like the most is just his ability to get lateral. There's some players on the Jaguars who struggle with that a little bit, the lateral movement part of it. And I think that his lateral movements and explosiveness forward in a straight line, that could really help open up some things for the Jaguars. The Jaguars were really, really bad in the screen game, in the quick game with some of these things this year. I think Chase Basantis and his skill set could help out in that regard. Now, we'll keep talking about his skill set. Does he fit into the starting lineup in year one? That just comes down to whether or not he can beat out an Ezra Cleveland or a Patrick McCary. Because I think that those are your clearly incumbent starters at those spots, left guard and right guard respectively. If he can beat them out as a rookie, then yes, he could find his way into the starting lineup. And he could, it could be a thing where it's like part of the way through the year. It's not week one. But I think he's a more talented player than either of those guys are. But they have obviously a wealth of experience, Patrick McCary and Ezra Cleveland compared to him. And I really like the way Ezra Cleveland played this year. Personally, if I'm looking at, getting Chase Basantis into the lineup, whatever happens with competition. You just don't know how it's going to play out. You don't want to say this is the desired result I have as a coach. And I'm not the coach, though, so I can look at whatever I want. Now, Chase Basantis, I would like to see if he was going to find his way into the starting lineup in year one, based on the way things have played out so far. I would like to see him at right guard. And again, not as experienced at right guard, but you can get that experience throughout the offseason and training camp. Patrick McCary played better down the stretch than he did early on this year, in my opinion, and he dealt with nagging injuries a lot of the year, so it's hard to really blame him too much. But I think that that's where you could really see an upgrade. And I just think he's a better overall athlete. I think he's got a much higher ceiling than Patrick McCary, but McCary's not going to, lay down. There's no question about that. Interesting thing with the Jaguars guards, both of your starting guards, Ezra Cleveland and Patrick McCary. McCary, after the 2026 season, if you go get Chase Basantis and you're like, this is our guy moving forward, we feel good about it, you could save $13 million in cap space heading into the 2027 offseason by moving on from Patrick McCary. You look at Ezra Cleveland as well. 2026 is actually the final year. So even though right now you have a couple guards locked in that you say, well, we don't feel too bad about it, heading into 2027, it is a major need in my opinion. Because I don't think you want to be having the $13 million on the books for Patrick McCary in 2027 for the level of play he gave you in 2025. I mean, if he drastically steps it up, sure, but I just don't think he's that level of player at this point to where you'd rather have him and $13 million on your books, or $13 million of cap space. I think I would definitely take the $13 million of cap space. But again, that's for 2027. But yeah, you go get Chase Basantis. I think that he has the potential to be very balanced. I think he's still growing technically, but I've seen players that were thoroughly unimpressive at times or unmemorable at times prior to 2025 on the Jaguars offensive line come in and do a really good job. I think that the Jaguars, their coaching staff, with Sean Sarrett, with Brian Picucci, who just came in, Liam Cohen dialing things up and working on this run game. I think that they could get a lot out of Chase Basantis. I think he could end up being a major upgrade long term, and again, maybe be early a just better depth option than Chuma Edoga currently is. And if you can get that, I know that people want starters early on in the draft, and eventually he definitely would be a starter, but I don't think you can go wrong protecting your investment, protecting Trevor Lawrence, and getting somebody who can help you get more creative and athletic in the run game. I think Chase Basantis does that in a big way. I watched his game against Miami, which was, I think, his worst rated game of the season. And even though there was some moments where a Miami defense that is loaded with NFL draft prospects, especially up front on the defensive line, they landed some punches. He landed a lot of punches too. He did some really good things. And so if that's his worst game, sign me up. That's kind of my opinion on it. Really appreciate y'all tuning in. If you enjoy the content, please like and subscribe. We will be back later today with more Jaguars coverage all off season long. You're going to be getting usually 2 videos per day during the weekdays, sometimes more. Only be one if we've got a lot of other things going on here. But again, really appreciate y'all tuning in and supporting the channel. Y'all have a good one.